Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new session with Rights and Responsibilities Awareness Initiative. Today, we're lucky again to have Kelly Wang to talk to us about the process of obtaining Canadian citizenship, a dream to so many people. Thank you, Kelly, for being here today with us, and thank you for everything you have done to support RRAI so far.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction, Haitham. It's great to be back, and good evening, everyone. I'm Kelly, and I'm here tonight to speak about the process of obtaining Canadian citizenship. Very exciting, but the process can be a little tricky at times, which is why I wanted to give you this session tonight. I myself am a new Canadian. I've been through it not that long ago, so I'm excited to be here tonight to present to you. So first up, a bit more about me. My name is Kelly Wang, and I am a Master of Education student at Ontario Tech University. And I'm also a journalist at 980 CFPL Global News Radio here in London. And I'm a research assistant at the STEAM 3D Maker Lab, which is a part of Ontario Tech University. And I'm a new Canadian. Here's me at my citizenship ceremony on August 28th of last year. It was such an amazing ceremony. I loved it so much. It wrapped up a 2-year-long process for me of obtaining citizenship. So very exciting. And I'm going to go through the ins and outs with you in this session. So in this presentation, I'll talk about, after an introduction, the process, required documents, citizenship test, the ceremony, and then also getting your Canadian passport. So let's start with an introduction. And I want to begin by mentioning the benefits of citizenship, which there are many, starting with travel. So Canadian citizens with a Canadian passport have lots of freedom when it comes to traveling. In fact, you can go to 188 countries without a visa. There's also voting rights, the right to vote in federal, provincial, and municipal elections, and you can also run for office. There's also more job opportunities for Canadian citizens. Now, as a PR or a permanent resident, you will have access to a huge majority of jobs. But if you're interested in certain jobs, especially related to government, sometimes you do need to be a citizen for that. There's also the convenience. So for example, no more needing to renew your PR card every 5 years. And there's legal protection. You will not be deported despite the seriousness of the crime that you're convicted of if you're a Canadian, whereas if you were to be a PR, you may be deported. However, just because you become a Canadian does not mean you have to give up your original citizenship. You can become a dual citizen. And what that is that more than one country recognizes you as a citizen. So for example, maybe you were born in Finland and you apply to be a Canadian citizen, you can keep both citizenships. Or you become a Canadian citizen and you move to the US later in the future. You can apply for dual citizenship with the US and Canada. However, as of 2021, only about 11% of Canada's citizens reported having dual citizenship. And when we look at the stat underneath it, we know why. And it's that only 49 countries as of 2021 allow for dual citizenship. So not very many. Some countries do allow for citizenship. Dual citizenship include United States, Australia, Italy, Switzerland, France, United Kingdom, and a few others. Whereas countries that do not allow for Canadian dual citizenship are, for example, China, India, Malaysia, Japan, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. I myself was born and raised in China, so I was a Chinese citizen. And when I became a Canadian citizen, because China does not allow for dual citizenship, I had to automatically get my Chinese citizenship revoked. Next up, I want to talk about the process of obtaining citizenship. Now, everything, or at least the majority of the things I'm talking to you about tonight, can be found on this website. This website contains pretty much all of the information that's going to be covered. So if you ever need a refresher or more information or details on something specific, definitely check this main website out. But otherwise, let's start with eligibility. So if you're an adult, 18 up, in order for you to be eligible to apply for citizenship, first of all, you need to be a permanent resident. You have to live in Canada for 3 out of the last 5 years. You have to have filed your taxes, prove your language skills, and pass a citizenship test. And I'm going to go over these one by one. First up, you have to be a permanent resident, and this is for all applicants, not just adults, this also includes minors and seniors as well. And you cannot be, for example, under review for immigration or fraud reasons, be asked by Canadian officials to leave Canada, for example, if you have a removal order, or if you have any unfulfilled conditions related to your PR status, like, for example, medical screening that's necessary. And you don't actually need a valid PR card to apply for citizenship. You can actually apply with an expired one. Next up, you have to live in Canada for 3 out of the last 5 years. And applicants have to be physically in Canada for at least 1,095 days, which is equivalent to 3 years during the 5 years before you sign the date of your application. However, the government actually encourages you to apply with more than just the bare minimum 3 days in mind, just in case there's any issues with the calculation. And in the calculation, you can include some of the time you spent in Canada as a temporary resident or a protected person. You also have to have filed your taxes, which is pretty self-explanatory. So we'll move on to the next one, which is proving your language skills. So those between the ages of 18 to 54 must demonstrate adequate knowledge of French or English. In terms of English, for speaking and writing, you have to be at least equivalent to a level 4 of the Canadian language benchmarks. So for example, this means that you can engage in short everyday conversations, understand simple instructions, questions, and directions, use basic grammar, and know enough common words and phrases to answer questions and really express yourself. Applicants are measured by their language skills by a variety of different ways. For example, officials may review the language proof that you gave as part of your application. So for example, you can send in a photocopy of your diploma from a Canadian college. That's what I did for my application. They may notice how well you speak when talking to a citizenship official anytime during the process. And they may also assess your language level during a citizenship test with an official if that's necessary. And you also have to pass a citizenship test if you are between the ages of 18 to 54. And this test will ask you questions about the rights and responsibilities of Canadian citizens, and also Canada's history, geography, economy, government, laws, and symbols. And I have an entire section dedicated to the citizenship test very shortly, so we're going to go over all of this very soon later on. Now, what about the kids? What about the minors? So minors 17 years and younger can also apply for Canadian citizenship, but they go through a different process. And there are 2 types of applications for minors. So the first one is a minor who has a Canadian parent or a parent who's also applying for citizenship at the same time as them, or a minor that does not have a Canadian parent or a parent who's applying for citizenship at the same time as them. The forms for both applications, along with forms for adult applications, can all be found online in the big link I showed you earlier, and they can all be submitted online or by mail. Now, the requirements for the 2 types of minor applications are very similar. They both require a $100 fee, and for them to be a permanent resident. If they're 14 years or older, they have to take the oath of citizenship. However, application number 2, which is the one where the minor does not have a Canadian parent or a parent who's applying for citizenship at the same time as them, they have to prove that they've been physically present in Canada for at least 3 out of the last 5 years, and they may also have to file for income tax. Now, how long is this all going to take? So on the Government of Canada's website, it shows processing times. And currently, the processing time for obtaining citizenship is 14 months. So this is the time from the time they get your application to the time when the ceremony and all that is complete. So 14 months is about average for what I've heard. However, I will also share my experience with all of you. So I mailed my application off at the end of August of 2021. And at that time, processing time was 12 months. My application was officially received in October of 2021. Next up, I did the test in June of 2022. And I was invited to a citizenship ceremony in April of 2023. However, at that time, a government worker strike broke out and it got postponed. I finally had my ceremony rescheduled for August 28th of last year, and that's when I finally became a Canadian. So the amount of time that it took for me to drop off my application off at the postal office versus actually sitting in the chair at the ceremony was pretty much exactly 2 years. Even though the processing time at the time was 12 months, it took longer because I mailed off my application rather than applying online. There was a government strike, and no doubts about it that I'm sure COVID had an impact on slowing things down as well. Next up, I want to talk about the required documents that you need to apply for citizenship. So there are 2 ways to apply. You can do so online or by mail. That is the link for if you would like to apply online. If you choose to apply by mail, there are 2 addresses you can send it to, one for regular mail and one for a courier, which is going to be faster. And there's also the application package available online at this link for you to check out. And this includes a full instruction guide, all the documents that you need, and all the information as well. And I'm going to go over these as well. A quick tip is to download Adobe Acrobat Reader. You will need this software if you are trying to download forms, which you do need to do for the citizenship process. It's free to download and free to use, and you can just fill out forms directly on it. You don't have to print it out and then, write it by hand. If you use a Mac like me, the preview will not work for these forms. You do have to download Adobe Acrobat Reader. And here is the actual complete checklist of everything you need to include for your actual application. You need application forms, a physical presence calculation printout, photocopy of all pages in your passport or travel documents during your 5-year eligibility period, photocopy of proof that demonstrates knowledge of English or French, photocopy of 2 personal IDs, 2 identical citizenship photos, a fee receipt, and also the checklist itself. And I'm going to go over these one by one as well, starting with application forms. The main form that you need to fill out is application for Canadian citizenship. If you require other forms, they may be for example, a name change, a sex change. In this main form, though, you will be asked about some basic information like your name, birthday, address, contact info. They will ask for your address during the past 5 years, whether you're in or out of Canada, your activity for the past 5 years, for example, work and school, and also questions about your criminal record. For the physical presence calculation printout, this is to be completed online through this link, and it will ask you about when you plan to sign the citizenship application and what date you actually became a permanent resident. It's going to calculate the number of days you print that out, and that's going to be part of your submission for your application for citizenship. You also need photocopies of all pages of your passport or travel documents during your 5-year eligibility period. And this includes the page that includes your name, photo, date, and place of birth, document number, issue date, and expiration date. If you do not have a travel document or passport, you have to provide an explanation in question 14 of the application form on why this is. You also have to have a photocopy of proof that demonstrates your knowledge in English or French. These examples include results from a third-party language test, a diploma, certificate, or transcripts from a secondary or post-secondary education program. Now, this can be in Canada or abroad, but the main point is that the language of study has to be either in English or French. And you also can include proof that you have reached the Canadian language benchmark level 4 or higher through a government-funded language training program. You are also required to provide photocopy of 2 personal IDs, and this could be, for example, a copy of the biographical page of your passport or travel document, and this was requested earlier, a driver's license, health insurance card, senior citizenship, identification card, age of majority card, foreign identity documents can be acceptable as well. However, a PR card may only be used as personal ID if your second piece of ID was issued by the Canadian government. You also need to include 2 identical citizenship photos, and this can be taken at Walmart or another photo center. From my personal experience, Walmart is the cheapest at $16.97 for a pair. Here's a tip. Definitely bring some face powder, which is a type of makeup, if you have oily skin like mine, to eliminate shine from your face. So I say that from personal experience because you cannot have a glare on the actual photo, and sometimes just wiping it with your hand or like a paper towel is not enough. The first time I went to get my picture taken, they actually rejected me because my forehead was too oily and shiny. So the second time I brought my makeup powder and I touched up right beforehand, and it worked out fine. Also, don't forget to write your name at the back of these photos. One of the requirements that the government has is that the back of the photos has to include information such as where you got your photo taken, the date. If you take it at Walmart, they will stamp it for you. So all you have to do is just write your name on the back. And finally, you have to include your receipt. The cost of citizenship is $630 for adults and $100 for minors. You can pay it online. And if you are applying by mail, you have to print it out and include the receipt in the actual application. So congrats, you got all of your stuff in place. You got all your documents done. You send it off. You've applied. Now what? Well, first things first, wait for your AOR. AOR is the acknowledgement of receipt, and you will either receive this by mail or email. And you'll get this after your application is received and checked to make sure it's complete. And there's no estimated processing time for this. For me personally, I got my AOR via email a month and a half after my application was received. And you can check your application status online after receiving your AOR. You can also contact the government about your application if needed. For example, if you move addresses, you have to let the government know. If you plan to leave Canada for more than 2 weeks in a row, if you're not able to check your application status online and the normal processing time has passed, or if you're charged with a crime. And next up, I want to talk about the actual citizenship test itself. So here is a screenshot taken from the government's website on who needs to do a test or the interview. If you are an adult ages 18 to 54, you have to do the test and you may be invited to an interview. If you are older than 55 or if you are 17 or younger, you do not need to do the test. However, you may be invited to do an interview, and I'll talk more about the interview later on. For the format of the test, it is going to be 20 questions, multiple choice or true and false. You have to get at least 15 out of 20 correct to pass. And it will ask you about the rights and responsibilities of Canadian citizens and Canada's history, geography, economy, government, laws, and symbols. You have 45 minutes long to complete the test, and it's taken online. You'll receive the test invite via email, and it can be taken online whenever you're ready. You have up to 3 chances to pass the test, and you have 30 days to complete the test after receiving your start date on your actual invite. You'll get your test score right away after completing it, but an official will verify it before you're invited to an actual ceremony. And if you cannot complete the test online for whatever reason, you can request to take the test in person. Here is the official study guide for the test. It's called Discover Canada, and it is a 68-page long PDF that you can read online or download and listen to for free. And here is the link for that. This booklet goes through everything that you need to know for the test. There's a lot of fun facts in there, information. It's pretty easy to digest. The pictures in there are very beautiful as well, and there's some practice questions in there as well. If you're looking for more practice questions, though, here are some websites that offer it. Richmond Public Library has a website, Citizenship Support, and also Citizenship Test. And these are all free to use, by the way. So for example, some sample questions you'll get from Richmond Public Library are, how is the Prime Minister chosen? The King appoints the Prime Minister, the Governor General with the Senate appoints the Prime Minister, the leader of the party with the most elected representatives becomes the Prime Minister, or the MPs vote on the Prime Minister. And this is very similar to the actual test. You have 1 question, 4 answers, and you pick the right one. In this case, the correct answer is the third option. The leader of the party with the most elected representatives becomes the Prime Minister. Another sample question could be, name 2 responsibilities of the provincial and territorial government, citizenship and foreign policy, health and education, defense and currency, criminal law, and interprovincial trade. In this case, the correct answer is number 2, health and education. If you're interested in doing a mock test with a very similar format to the actual test, I recommend checking out Citizenship Support's website for this one. The link is at the bottom of the slide. And this screenshot is very similar to what you'll actually see on the actual test. You'll have questions to the left, this little grid on the right that shows all of the questions. You can choose to answer the question right then and there, or you can choose to review after. And then at the end, you can review all of your questions before finally submitting and then getting your test score. And there's also a timer on how much time you have left. On the day of the actual test, when you're ready to do it, you'll need to take a photo of an ID, so have an ID with you. And you'll also need to take a photo of yourself with a webcam. So use a computer or laptop that has a webcam. You have to be alone. And your webcam will be used throughout the test. It will be on, and what the system will do is it will take photos at times. It's not going to record video or audio though, but it will take pictures. And you must close all other tabs on your laptop and turn off your VPN as well. So you log on, you show them the ID, your face, you do the test, and after you're done the test, officials will confirm your test score, and there's no set processing time for that. Your test result may be invalid if you're, for example, suspected of cheating, if you didn't take a picture of your ID, or if there were to be like a tech issue with confirming your identity, for example, not being able to see you through your webcam. You may also be invited after the test to do an interview with a citizenship official, and this is on a case-by-case basis. I myself was invited for an interview in December of 2022, which was a year and 2 months after submitting my application. It was a phone call with a government worker. It was around 15 minutes long, and I was asked just some basic questions. It almost felt like double checking the application form to see if there were any new changes. They did ask me if there were any new changes, and they also asked whether I wanted my ceremony to be done online or in person. And then after that, you will be invited to a citizenship ceremony. And again, there's no set processing time on how long that will take. All right, now for the actual ceremony, you'll receive an invite for your citizenship ceremony either by email or mail 1 to 2 weeks in advance of your actual ceremony. And this invite will include the ceremony's date and time, video conference link if it's virtual, or location if it's in person. If the scheduled date and time don't work for you, you have to contact officials and explain why you cannot attend. Their contact information, which is usually an email, will be included in the invite. The ceremony is an hour and a half long in person and an hour long virtually. So what are you going to bring to the ceremony if it's in person? First up, your ceremony notice or invite, a signed copy of the permission, release, and consent form, which is included with the notice. This is basically a consent form for you to allow pictures of you, videos of you to be taken. Your PR card, even if it's expired, 2 pieces of ID, and one of them must have your photo and signature on it. All of your passports and travel documents that you listed on the application form. And you may be allowed to invite a limited number of guests. I was allowed to invite 2 guests to mine, so I invited my parents. However, you may not be able to sit next to them because there is assigned seating at the ceremony. So at the ceremony, you will take the oath of citizenship. You'll get your citizenship certificate. You'll sign the oath of citizenship form, and you'll sing the national anthem. So here is the oath of citizenship. And the way that it works is that an official will be guiding the ceremony, and they will say one line and you will repeat one line. There are oaths in both English and French. And at my ceremony, we actually did oaths in both languages. You don't have to memorize it. The official will go slow on you and they'll do one line at a time, and then everyone will repeat after them. But here is the English version of the oath, and I'll also play a video of it as well.
I swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty, King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors, and that I will faithfully observe the laws of Canada, including the Constitution, which recognizes and affirms the Aboriginal and treaty rights of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, and fulfill my duties as a Canadian citizen.
That is the oath, and while you're taking the oath, your right hand will be by your side like that. You'll also be singing the national anthem with everyone. There are different versions of the national anthem: English only, French only, bilingual English first, and bilingual French first. Usually the bilingual English first version is sang at the ceremony, and here are the lyrics to it, and I will play a recording of it. Also at the ceremony, you'll also get a little flag and a maple leaf pen for you to keep. You get to take photos and videos. You get to receive a congratulatory letter from the Prime Minister. And of course, you get to celebrate. Here is a video of our celebration within the actual ceremony. We're all cheering and waving our flags as the official said that we're all now part of the Canadian family.
Congratulations and welcome to the Canadian family.
That was such an awesome moment, and everyone was so happy, and all the families were cheering, and it really is so incredibly so special. So after you become a Canadian, you can now apply for a Canadian passport. Here is the main website for getting a Canadian passport with all of the information. But basically, you have to fill out a form and collect some necessary documents. And this includes your citizenship certificate, which you'll receive at your ceremony, ID, and 2 identical passport photos. They're the same requirements as citizenship photos, so you can go back to where you originally took your citizenship photos for another round. And your guarantor must sign the back of one. Now, you may be wondering what a guarantor is, and I'll talk about that right now. Also, as part of your application for a Canadian passport, you have to include 2 references and 1 guarantor. References have to have known you for at least 2 years, and they cannot be a family member. A guarantor can be related to you. They must have known you for at least 2 years. They have to be a Canadian citizen, is 18 years or older, and have a Canadian passport of their own. And references and guarantors are there to be contacted by officials if they need to confirm your identity or information. You also need to book an appointment for your passport, and you can book an appointment online at this link, or you can walk in at a Service Canada Center. Of course, with any walk-in service, you risk very long lines. During this appointment, bring all the necessary documents and forms, and you'll pay for your passport during this appointment. For the fees, a 5-year adult passport is $120, and a 10-year adult passport is $160. Now, when we think of adult, we usually think 18 up, but when it comes to passports, it's age 16 and up. A child passport for those ages 0 to 15 is $57. And passports will be mailed to you within 20 business days. And from my personal experience, it's accurate. And when it comes to being a Canadian, there are other perks as well. For example, Parks Canada. New Canadians actually get to enjoy free admission to all places that are run by Parks Canada for a full year. And this includes national parks, national historic sites, and national marine conservation areas. And you can also register to vote and exercise that freedom. In terms of federal voting, you can go to Elections Canada's page and register to vote there. And for provincial, for Ontarians, it's going to be Elections Ontario. You will not be automatically put in the pool for eligible voters. You do have to manually register yourself if you would like to vote. And that concludes my presentation. Being a Canadian is extremely fulfilling, and the process may be long, but absolutely worth it. I want to thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope it was helpful, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for this informative presentation. And I would like to invite our friends who's watching us on different social media platform. If you have any question, please post it to the chat. I'm more than happy to read it for Kelly. However, I do have actually a question. Kelly, during that process of the application, and starting from dropping that application into the mailbox until you receive the ceremony stuff, how would you describe your feelings? You were excited, looking forward. Can you just give us a personal moment about how you felt?
Absolutely, Haitham. And I love the question very much. It gets me to reflect. Yeah, so when you first apply, you definitely see the processing time and think, oh my goodness, it's going to take forever. But time will definitely creep up on you like it always does. Throughout my process, it was definitely a bit of a test of patience. Some days I just wanted to do the test right away, but of course you have to wait for the official invite. But you know, you will receive periodic updates. You can check manually whenever you would like to. And slowly but surely, your time will come. It was always very exciting for me. I had a really enjoyable time actually studying for the test. It kind of reminded me of history and geography class back in elementary and high school a little bit because the curriculum was kind of the same. And then, of course, receiving my initial ceremony invite was an incredible feeling. Unfortunately, my first one got postponed because of the strike, so that was a disappointment. I was nervous that it wasn't going to be I wasn't going to be invited to another one very quickly, but luckily I was, and it's absolutely worth it at the end.
Thank you so much. So talking about the test, is there any recommended tips, tricks, something that people can use to study for the test?
Yeah, absolutely. So practice tests online are a great way to do so. And I find that different platforms kind of have their own unique way of formatting some of the questions. But I will say they're pretty accurate to what the actual test is. From my personal experience, I don't want to speak for anyone else. I actually found that the practice test questions were kind of easier than the actual test questions. So that was a bit of a bonus. For me, I read Discover Canada, the study guide, about 3 times, and then I highlighted areas that were a little bit trickier to me. For me, the history aspect was a little bit trickier, so I read those a little bit more, you know, got to know the numbers and the years a little bit more. But the booklet, practice tests online are definitely great ways to start.
I see. So taking that we don't have any more questions, I would like to thank you, Kelly, for all of this information. It's great to have you always with Rights and Responsibilities Awareness Initiative. And for everyone, thank you so much for attending with us tonight. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Awesome. Thank you, Haitham. We're off the stream.